Every story is told and performed by the characters in it. In today's video, we will learn about the lives portrayed in the novel Wide Sargasso Sea, penned by Jean Rhys. The novel takes the reader to another world entirely different from the one presented in Jane Eyre. In this story, we see the life of Antoinette Causeway and everyone she was connected to before she was shut in the attic. The title of the story is taken from the Sargasso Sea, which lies between Europe and West Indies, which is known for its difficulty to navigate through. This phenomenon is evident in the novel as well because the people fail to navigate through their life and is unable to cope with the situation in which they are stuck. The major characters in the novel are Antoinette Causeway, an unnamed narrator whom we recognize as Rochester, Christophine, Daniel Causeway, and Grace Poole. In order to remember the characters, it would be easy to learn them according to where they belong to in the story. The four major setting of the story is the Calibri estate, the Grand Boys, the Convent School, and last, England. Now let's look into the characters in detail. Antoinette Causeway is the protagonist of the story. She had a troubled childhood. Her father was dead, and her mother suffered from depression because they lost their livelihood and social standing due to the Emancipation Act. Antoinette Causeway was always left alone and she had no one to rely upon. She was not accepted by her people and was referred to as a white cockroach or the white nigger by her community. She also had troubled dreams. In this novel, three dreams of hers are mentioned. They all have a prophetic quality because her dreams are usually followed by tragedy. In her dream, she always saw her walking in company of people she had no idea who they were and was often led to places she didn't want to go. The first dream took place and the biggest tragedy or the first tragedy happened. The Calibri estate was burned down by a mob and her life altered forever. Her mother, Annette, goes mad after that, and her brother, Pierre, dies as well. She is sent to the convent school by her stepfather, Mr. Mason, and she viewed the convent school as her refuge. The experience of hers at the convent school was mixed, but she was happy. The second dream in the story takes place at that time, and afterwards she is married off to Mr. Rochester by her stepbrother, Mr. Richard Mason. And the last dream in the novel takes place in the final pages of the entire novel, and that is right before the house in England is consumed down by fire. And the rest of the action takes place in the story Jane Eyre. So, the importance of dreams is that it showcased the fear that was so prominent in Antoinette Causeway. After her marriage with the Englishman Mr. Rochester, he named her Bertha. That was his attempt to define her, and she resisted it many a time but did not succeed in her attempt. Altogether, Antoinette led a miserable life due to her marriage and her inability to understand and articulate her true self. Now let's look into the other characters of the novel. The first person is the English young man who came to Jamaica from England to meet Antoinette. The name is not referred in the novel at all, and from the description and the actions, the reader understands that the person is Rochester. It is very evident he only agrees to marry for the money because he was poor himself. And after they were married, we see Rochester having a few feelings for her, but it was not out of genuine love. He totally believes in the information Daniel Causeway gives to him and confirms that Antoinette is crazy and then locks her up in the attic so she cannot hurt herself or others. Another major character in the novel is Christophine. She was a gift from Old Causeway to Antoinette's mother. She was a Martinique and was a very royal person, a fiercely independent woman who took pride in being able to provide for herself. She practiced obey and got into trouble because that was not accepted by the law. Christophine is the only person in the novel who stands up and fights for Antoinette, and she attempts many times to save her, but she also fails. Another character is Daniel Causeway. He is Antoinette's alleged half brother who passes on the information to Rochester. He says that Antoinette is mad, her mother was mad, her father was a drunkard, and all sort of theories which actually manipulates Rochester's mind and pushes him towards taking wrong decisions. Then the next character is Grace Poole. She appears in the last part of the novel and she's the caretaker of Antoinette Causeway after she is locked up in the attic. Sandy, the next character, is the son of Antoinette's half brother Alexander, and in the novel, we see him having an intimate relationship with Antoinette. Now let's look at the characters at Calibri. Annette is her mother, Old Causeway, her late father, Pierre is her younger brother who was sick from the very beginning of the narrative, and Aunt Cora was someone who extended Antoinette a lot of support and sympathy, love and care when everything was so bad for her. The next important person is Mr. Mason. He is the one who marries Annette, Antoinette's mother, and restores the dilapidated estate. But he ignores Annette's constant pleas to go away from Calibri, which proves to be tragic. He comes into the narrative with so many intention, but soon fades away from the narrative as a whole. Richard Mason is his son who gives Antoinette away to Rochester. I have included Christophine here once again because she was someone who was with Antoinette and her family in Calibri. She was respected and feared by everyone in the estate. In fact, it is only right to say that Christophine ensured the functioning of the estate was proper till Mr. Mason arrived. The other workers at Calibri was Myra, Sars, and Godfrey. Myra is the one who left the house when the mob attacked it, leaving behind Pierre, who later dies. The next character is Tia. Though her duration in the novel is so less, she is the one who gives Antoinette the first taste of betrayal. She reminds Antoinette that they were poor, steals her clothes when they were playing at the bathing pool, and forces Antoinette to return home in Tia's clothes. The next instance was when Tia hit her with a stone while she ran towards her for comfort when Antoinette's house was on fire. The impact of Tia's action on the psyche of Antoinette is so strong because she screams and calls out Tia's name at the end of the novel right before the place is engulfed by fire. Coco was her pet parrot who was burned to death and projects a very disturbing image of suffering in the novel. The characters at the convent school is discussed in this slide. We have to remember three names: Mother Saint Justin, Sister Mary Augustine, and Louise Duplan. Mother Saint Justin was the head of the convent and she taught the students there about saints. Both the sisters constantly was a source of comfort for Antoinette. Louise Duplan was a model student of the convent and she helped Antoinette to adjust with the scenario. The last set of characters we have to see is at Grand Boys. We have already seen Daniel Causeway and discussed his characteristics in the earlier slide, but I have included him here because he arrives at Grand Boys to meet Rochester and fill him with all sort of wrong information. The workers at Grand Boys are Amelie, Baptist, the boy, and Hilda. Baptist does not care for Rochester even though he is the caretaker at Grandboy's. The boy, on the other hand, is so fond of Rochester and hopes to go to Spanish Town with him. Hilda is someone who constantly keeps laughing. Amelie is a servant to Antoinette and Rochester. She looks down at Antoinette and fights with her. She despises her and calls her as a white cockroach. Rochester and Amelie has a one-night affair which he regrets later. The master-servant relationship in this part of the story is quite different because the slaves or the servants do not care for their masters and is not afraid of them. The reader sometimes feels that the masters are actually careful not to invite the wrath of the servants upon them. The major and the minor characters are quite tangled in this story, and their tale does not go to any closure. Their narrative is incomplete, which makes the story a remarkable experience to the reader. Thank you.